U.S.-China Ray Zone rivalry in South China Sea may be about to intensify. American plans to include Coast Guard in integrated naval force highlights growing role of non-military Ray Zone maritime activities. New strategy formalises ways of countering China Coast Guard, which is used heavily to project power and assert claims in the disputed waters. The United States has announced a strategy to integrate its maritime forces, including its Coast Guard, to counter China's growing presence in the contested South China Sea. In the new American maritime warfare strategy for the next decade, the U.S. Navy, Marine Corps and Coast Guard have jointly pledged to build and graded all-domain naval power and called for strengthening maritime alliances. It called China a most pressing, long-term strategic threatless strategy, titled Advantage at Sea and published last month, defined the U.S. Navy objectives as reserving freedom of the seas, deterring aggression and winning wars. It stated, China behavior and accelerated military growth place it on a trajectory that will challenge our ability to continue to do so. We are at an inflection point. The latest tri-service maritime strategy was the first since 2015, and came at a time when China and the U.S. had been ramping up Ray Zone activities to project power below a threshold that could prompt a conventional military response. The Chinese government claims nearly 90% of the resource-rich South China Sea, based on what it calls its 9-dash line, which has been fiercely challenged by its neighbors including Vietnam, the Philippines, Brunei and Malaysia. China claim was ruled in 2016 by a UN tribunal to have no legal basis, a verdict Beijing rejected. The waterway, one of the busiest in the region, has also become a potential flashpoint between China and the US, given its geostrategic location. Little information was given on how exactly the Coast Guard would play a role in the South China Sea, but the U.S. Coast Guard has a long history of involvement in U.S. theater security engagement in the region, such as taking part in training exercises between the U.S. Pacific Fleet and Southeast Asian nations, said Colin Cole, a research fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies in Singapore. This new tri-service maritime strategy essentially enshrines the pre-existing habits of cooperation and coordination, and serves as a guiding framework on how these U.S. maritime forces work together and pool their strengths to counter China maritime activities, he said. Derek Grossman, a senior defense analyst with U.S. think tank the RAND Corporation, said the intent was to use more mobile and less lethal or non-lethal platforms to contest China's de facto presence in disputed waters. The U.S. may be able to more effectively deter Chinese activities in this way, though it is also conceivable that Beijing would escalate the conflict by bringing in Chinese People Liberation Army Navy assets, triggering potential U.S. Navy involvement, Grossman said. Unlike its Navy and Marine Corps, which fall under the U.S. Defense Department, the U.S. Coast Guard operates under the Homeland Security Department during peacetime, making its work less sensitive than overtly military actions when engaging with Southeast Asian countries that have long been reluctant to take sides in the great power competition between China and the U.S. The U.S. could seek to expand its rivalry agreements to claim its sites in Southeast Asia, to give it legitimate access to the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Under those agreements, a country patrol officials are allowed to board law enforcement vessels or aircraft of the U.S. Coast Guard while they are on patrol, during which the former can authorize the latter to take action on their behalf. Since 2010, the U.S. has signed bilateral shipbuilder agreements with 11 Pacific Island nations for joint law enforcement operations to counter illegal fishing. The U.S. Coast Guard new approach to intervening in South China Sea affairs under the name of Fisheries Enforcement Cooperation, so as to hedge against China activities in the South China Sea, may still be an important option of the South China Sea policy for the future U.S. administrations, Yan Yan, director of the Research Center of Oceans Law and Policy in the National Institute for South China Sea Studies, said in a recent report. Signing such agreements, Yan said, was in effect a cession of sovereign rights by the claimant states to the U.S. in their exclusive economic zones. which will make the disputed waters in the South China Sea subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S., thus legitimizing the U.S. Coast Guard presence in the South China Sea. Yan wrote that a possible scenario that may increase the risk of maritime conflict might be Philippine law enforcement officers boarding U.S. Coast Guard vessels to carry out operations against Chinese fishers in waters around Scarborough Shoal claimed by both the Philippines, in whose exclusive economic zone it lies, and China, which calls it Hongyan Island. Such cooperation between the U.S. and Southeast Asian nations who claim parts of the South China Sea have been growing steadily, largely over deepening concerns about China's powerful Coast Guard fleets, which Beijing has relied heavily on to project power and assert its maritime claims. Chinese Coast Guard ships have played a leading role in several recent gray zone activities, including in fishing disputes off Indonesia Natuna Islands and the standoff with Vietnam over Vanguard Bank. The U.S. and its allies, including Japan, have offered capacity-building programs, training and equipment transfers to their Coast Guard counterparts in Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia and Indonesia, seeking to modernize their capability despite a wide gap in scale and sophistication with the Chinese Coast Guard. The U.S. and Vietnam have signed a Memorandum of Understanding in July to enhance Vietnam law enforcement and fisheries management through information sharing and technical programs, which Hanoi Times said could combat illegal fishing. Risk of conflict would be high, observers have warned, especially with no clear rules on gray zone standoffs and combat. There have been calls to expand the military-focused code for unplanned encounters at sea, but without concrete progress.